This is the S2G podcast, where we share conversations that help us understand how to scale the food, agriculture, oceans, and energy transitions. I'm your host, Tanya Bekritzes. In this episode, we dig into the opportunity for RNA to transform the agricultural sector and beyond with Andrey Zarur, CEO of GreenLight Biosciences, and our own Matthew Walker. As a reminder, this content is for informational purposes only. It should not be taken as legal, business, tax, or investment advice, or be used to evaluate any investment or security, and is not directed at any investor or potential investor in any investment vehicle sponsored by S2G. Investing involves risk, including the risk of loss. Specific companies mentioned in this podcast are for educational purposes and should not be construed as an endorsement of any kind. Please note that S2G may maintain investments in some of the companies discussed on this podcast. For more important information, please see s2gventures.com/disclosures. Agricultural pests are no small nuisance. Plant diseases cost the global economy around $220 billion and invasive insects around $70 billion each year, according to the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization. The use of synthetic pesticides in the U.S. began in the 1930s and became widespread after World War II. Today, farmers depend heavily on synthetic pesticides, and while these products enabled agricultural outputs to reach today's levels, they are now taking an increasing toll on the health of the environment, animals, and humans. We need a new suite of solutions to meet the agricultural needs of today. We believe that one promising technology for addressing pests and disease in agriculture is RNA. Yes, the same molecule that rose to prominence with the success of the COVID-19 vaccine. We are just scratching the surface of the potential use cases for RNA, and not many people understand this opportunity better than Andrey Zarur. Andrey is the founder and CEO of GreenLight Biosciences, an S2G portfolio company harnessing the power of RNA to create cost-competitive, effective crop protection products that have no off-target impacts. Their first product, Calantha, helps farmers control the Colorado potato beetle. It is the first EPA-approved crop protection product based on RNA. In this episode, Chuck Templeton interviews Andrey about the journey of taking a company from the problem space to having a first-of-a-kind product in the market. Chuck also chatted with Matt Walker, managing director at S2G, who has been working with GreenLight and Andrey for many years, as they took a technology with seemingly limitless applications and honed in on a handful of products that are in the pipeline today. Matt provides the investor perspective on GreenLight's journey and why he finds the company's technology, business model, and team so compelling. This narrative is full of insights about what it takes to bring a product to market in an industry that is full of technical and policy challenges, as well as opportunities. We're excited to share it with you today.
Hello, Andrey. How are you today?
Wonderful, Chuck. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Really excited for our conversation today. A lot of really special things you guys have been working on. So tell us a little bit about who you are and your background.
Absolutely. So my name is Andrey. I started this little company called GreenLight about 15 years ago. That happened to be the first time ever that I worked on anything related to food. I came from the life sciences pharmaceutical world, where I worked over 20 years in things like cancer, muscular dystrophy, muscular atrophy, autoimmune diseases. As it happens to many people, I decided to start a new company, GreenLight, to deal with a personal issue. Turns out my son, Alex, who's now a wonderful 19-year-old, when he was a baby, we discovered he was very sensitive, neurologically sensitive, to a number of residues from chemical synthetic pesticides that were accumulated on food. So GreenLight was started really to try to solve a problem that obviously affected Alex, but more broadly affects millions of children around the world, which is susceptibility to residues of chemical pesticides that are left over on the foods that we eat every day.
One of the things that I love that you're doing here is a lot of entrepreneurs have a solution and then they're going to find a problem for it. Whereas you started with the problem, your son, and some of the challenges around diet and whatnot. Then you went out and scoured the world to figure out what's the solution for that problem, and knowing that a lot of other people had that problem or that opportunity that they wanted to solve also.
The vast majority of transformative industry-changing companies is because there is a problem and there is a group of people with extraordinary ambition that will go and find the optimal solution. It takes too long and it's too hard to be inspired by the solution. It is that fundamental need to fix something that is broken that keeps you going for 8 years before you get the first glimmer of success.
And so, what was the journey of this big problem that is out there and very broad to thinking about, okay, how do I narrow down this to figure out what angle I want to attack this problem at?
So, the approach we took is not new or different. It's something that we humans have done throughout our multi-100,000-year evolution on this planet. The first time we solve a problem, any problem, we take the brute force approach to it. So imagine the first people who started on the crop protection side of the world saying, we have pests that are attacking our crops. Let's find something that kills those pests. And so the solution back then was chemicals, but chemicals that were non-specific, right? That you would spray and kill a bug, but potentially kill many other bugs, many of which could be beneficials, pollinators, but could also affect other life forms like birds, like fish, like humans. And then at some point we figure out, all right, we have to find much more elegant ways to solve those problems. And so we took a page out of pharmaceutical sciences, where for the first 100 years of the pharmaceutical industry, we were using chemical synthetics, small molecules, to address disease. And that at some point has diminishing returns because you're not addressing the underlying biology that is causing the problem, right? Cancer cells can be tackled by chemotherapy, which is a chemical, but more elegantly, you can train the immune system to clear cancer cells, right? That's using biology to deal with the fundamental cause of the problem that you have. Think about a pest attacking a field. You can use a chemical and destroy that pest and everything else around it. Or you can figure out if there's a biological process inherent to that organism that you can go after that will allow you to arrest that particular pest and have no impact whatsoever on anything else, right? On any other life forms, on the environment, and obviously on the health of our children, who eventually will eat those foods.
So how did you start to slowly think through some of these challenges? And the solution that you ultimately ended up with is RNA.
It is really interesting, right? Because it does come back to our education, right? I was trained as a scientist. And as a scientist, what you are taught is that you're going to generate a number of hypotheses, and you're going to be narrowing down the field of potential solutions through a systematic, rigorous evaluation of scientific outcomes. And so when you're saying, here's the promise, I have a biological entity that is destroying food, we have to find biological, highly specific ways to tackle them. What are the potential solutions? Enzymes, hormones, proteins, peptides, microbes, etc. You start coming down the list and you create hypotheses. And you say, all right, if I use a microbe, I'm going to have to be able to do these things and so on. Eventually, what you end up with is a target product profile. What will a farmer want? And that's really what cracked this code. Because farmers want something that is inexpensive. I don't want to pay more for something that is better. I want to pay the same or less and get better outcomes. Really important, especially in a world where farmers are under incredible economic, financial, and performance pressure, right? Number two, I need something that will perform as well as what you're replacing, because I'm also not willing to sacrifice on efficacy. Number three, it has to be extraordinarily specific, because I want to kill that insect and nothing other than that insect or fungi or weed or whatever it is that you're addressing. With those hypotheses in mind, then you start narrowing down the field. And very quickly, things like complex proteins get thrown out because they're not going to be specific enough and they're not going to be inexpensive enough. Things like microbes, in many cases, get thrown out because the consistent performance year over year to prevent a pest from destroying the field is just not there to the extent that farmers want them. And so very quickly, we narrowed it down to a couple of biochemical solutions, of which RNA was one of them, right? RNA had been used previously and had been demonstrated to be able to interfere with insects and fungi and weeds and so on. And then you start looking at, okay, what do we have to do to go from this concept to an actual product that a farmer can use? And you end up refining that target product profile, right? It needs to be user-friendly. It needs to be shelf-stable. You need to be able to apply it in the same way that you're applying those chemicals. In the case of RNA, the real challenge was manufacturing. When we started this company, the largest ever batch of RNA that had ever been created was about 1 gram, 1 gram. And we very quickly realized we were going to need metric tons. So we needed to somehow increase production capacity from what was the best in the world at that point by over 1 million-fold. And while we were doing that, gram cost $10,000 to make. And we needed to get that cost from $10,000 to about 20 cents. So the problem actually became an engineering problem, a seemingly impossible engineering problem, but engineering nevertheless. You need to improve capacity by 1 million times and reduce costs by 100,000 times.
Andrey and the GreenLight team have decided that the best suited candidate to address the need for alternatives to chemical pesticides is RNA. But there are still a number of major hurdles ahead, and they had to convince investors that this was a worthwhile endeavor. Matt gave us some insight into why he was excited about GreenLight in the early days.
We first met Andrey and the GreenLight team in 2017, actually. And at the time, this was really about a new paradigm in pest control and crop protection. And what really excited us was this molecule of RNA. And the reason is because often, as we do in the food and ag team, we look at various different crop protections in the market. And you've had a legacy regime that includes many chemical-based pesticides. And they've been very effective for decades, but they are a carpet-bombing approach to pest control. And so we're looking for cleaner or gentler solutions. And we look at a lot of solutions that are certainly cleaner for the environment and wouldn't be harmful to humans, but sometimes their efficacy is questionable. And the thing that's exciting to us, and it was exciting in 2017, still is the potential for RNA to work. And this is a product that, when applied, is virtually no off-target impact. So it is better for the environment. It is clean. It is something that all humans are in contact with at all times. But at the same time, it has a known mode of action. And so this is really potentially a holy grail-like pest control. And at the time, there was nothing commercialized. And so this was all somewhat notional, and we invested at an early stage for the business with the idea that this company and this team could actually bring an RNA-based product to market. And the fundamental technology was really around production of RNAs at a very low price point with very high quality in very large quantities.
It is clear RNA had promise, but for the technology to ever be feasible, the team has to reduce the cost and increase production by a degree that at the time seemed near impossible. Andrey shared how he arrived at the target price point.
You're in your process, you're starting to narrow it down to RNA. Did you go out and talk to farmers about what the cost would be and think about what level of concentration you needed to be successful and to have the efficacy that you needed? How did you start to go through those calculations?
So very early on, we realized that we were going to use somewhere between 10 and 100 grams of RNA per acre, just based on how much RNA you need to be effective at interfering with the gene expression of the target insect. Okay, so you have that data point, which is theoretical at that point. And let's take our first product. First product is an insecticide against the Colorado potato beetle. We know that farmers today are buying insecticides off the shelf that cost anywhere between $25 and $50 per acre to spray against the Colorado potato beetle. And so we need to be able to produce somewhere between 5 and 100 grams of RNA for less than 25 to $50 an acre, because we obviously want to make a profit margin. And so we started looking at, can we come up with a manufacturing process that can take 10,000-fold out of the cost of manufacturing RNA? And if we can get down below $1 per gram, then we'll refine everything else and we'll be within the neighborhood of what we need to be able to deliver to a farmer. Now, what I just described, going from $10,000 to less than $1 per gram, took 8 years.
Did you hire for that? Did you go out and get third-party consulting firms? What was the process?
We use the same framework, the scientific method, right? We didn't hire consulting firms. We talked to a lot of people who were far smarter than we are. But eventually we did the same exact thing. We said, we need to get from $10,000 a gram to less than $1 per gram. Here are all the potential different hypotheses that can drive the cost of RNA down to that level. And we're going to systematically eliminate the ones that don't work and continue to improve on the ones that do work. Eventually, we came up with something very unique, something that nobody had ever achieved in the past. It's something called cell-free bioprocessing, which when we went and started talking to people, they said, look, a lot of people have tried to do this, and they always get stuck in this one particular step. Because what we were trying to solve for was using the building blocks of RNA. RNA is the oldest biological molecule in our world. It is the origin of life in our planet is RNA. And we were trying to find a more effective way to make RNA than nature itself. And that seems really difficult to do. Because if there was a way for natural organisms to make RNA in a more effective way, nature would have already found it. Nature is the ultimate scientist. It runs billions and trillions of experiments every second. And the most successful ones survive and the ones that are not successful die. But it turns out nature was making RNA very effectively when the planet looked very different than what it looks like today. If you look at today's Earth, it's temperate, it's got oxygen, it's got all this other organic molecules floating around, so making RNA is relatively straightforward. Go back in time 4.5 billion years ago, and the Earth is a very different place. There's no oxygen. Where life started, there's no light, so photosynthesis didn't exist, and yet organisms were thriving, and we know they were making RNA. So long story short, we make RNA in a very similar manner to how organisms made RNA 4.5 billion years ago, which at that time in the history of our planet was in fact the most effective way to make RNA. So we still use nature, we just use nature plus a time machine.
GreenLight has now unlocked the technology to produce RNA at a scale and price point to make it viable for agriculture. Now they have to decide what problem to tackle first.
One of the things I like to talk about, or that I've been experienced as an entrepreneur myself, is that oftentimes opportunity is not the challenge, it's focus. We see all kinds of directions we could go and problems we could solve. How did you really start to think about, okay, what's the right use occasion here? Yeah. Is it the largest TAM in the world I should go after? Or is it, oh, the product works better here, or I've got an uncle who's doing something over there that I can get with? Like, how did you really think about narrowing it down to the solution that you're leading with these days?
Are you a fan of boxing?
Sure. Yeah, I love it.
So when you're getting into your boxing career, what's the first fight you fight? It's a fight that you can win.
There you go.
Are you going to go on day one and be like, Muhammad Ali, I'm going to take you down because you're the biggest TAM? If you do that, you're going to get your butt kicked. You go after a fight that you know you can win. And so our first product was against the Colorado potato beetle, which is, I don't know, in the world of boxing, that would be equivalent to getting into a fight outside a bar with somebody who's 100 pounds lighter than you are. Okay? It's still a really important pest, right? It causes about $500 million of potato crop damage every single year. But potatoes, as you probably know, are a crop that requires a lot of inputs. And so the average farmer will put between $2,000 and $3,000 worth of stuff into an acre of potatoes. And if they're successful at growing their potatoes, the revenue from that acre of potatoes can be anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000. So you have room. If you achieve good control of potato beetle and you happen to be a little bit more expensive than you want it to be, you may still win the fight. If you end up using a little bit more than you thought you were going to use, you'll still win the fight. And so you fight the fight that you can win. Because we had the margin opportunity, the size of the problem was sufficiently large, the resistance of the potato beetle against traditional chemical pesticides is on the significant rise. The damage caused by these pests is increasing. The biological barriers to get RNA into a potato beetle are fairly straightforward, right? You have your strategy on how you're going to go and approach this problem, knowing that you're going to land every punch. The second product, similar, right? It's a little bit harder fight, right? So now you're getting into the circuit here. And you're in the amateur circuit, and now it's the varroa mite. It's a pest that affects honeybees. But it's a really good pest because it's contained, because it's small in footprint, because you don't need a lot of material, and it's a big market. But now we think we're going to win that fight, and now we're beginning to get into the major leagues. So now we're fighting fall armyworm in corn in Brazil, and we're fighting Botrytis cinerea, which is the largest fungal pest ever. We have a herbicide that is hopefully going into the field very soon, right? You're now decking it out with the big guys. But in order to get to that level, you first have to win some fights. And that's how we chose the first 2 or 3 programs.
As Andrey mentioned, their next product targets the varroa mite, which has wreaked havoc on honeybee populations. More on that later. First, GreenLight has to face what might be its most daunting obstacle yet, EPA approval. There was no precedent for EPA approval for an RNA-based crop protection product, but Andrey was able to shift his thinking about the EPA process.
For the most part, we, at the beginning, thought that the EPA was a burden, was an obstacle. It's only very recently that we began to realize what an amazing opportunity working with the EPA has been. It's funny because people tend to think about the EPA, the FDA, the USDA, whatever regulatory agency as the evil guys. Seriously, there's people who are extraordinarily bright scientists working for a government organization for less money than they could be making almost anywhere else. And they are there because they're passionate about, in the case of the EPA, protecting the environment. Number one, you got to have a level of respect for these people that is far beyond what most people think about regulators. And so number one was realizing that we have a shared mission. The second thing we realized is that their job has become increasingly complicated as it relates to protecting food, because the consumer doesn't want the products that we sell as an industry. You go and talk to a consumer in the supermarket, they don't want more agrochemicals. Right? So their job is being made much more complicated by the fact that the public has a level of scrutiny over how they do their job on a daily basis that I don't think is parallel in any other industry. And so the bars kept getting higher and higher. But what a lot of people don't realize is the goalposts keep moving because we keep moving them. We, the consumers, we want things that are safe for pollinators, for our water, for our soil, for our children. And once we understood what it was going to take to satisfy those requirements, and it was a daunting task, and it included education, and it included policy, and it included a whole host of other things, then it became just one more execution product. What is it going to take to demonstrate that this product matches the criteria that our people have demanded get put in place? Now, in retrospect, it was long, it was tedious, it was expensive, but in the end, it is gratifying because now we know what it takes. Funny to think about this, but for example, we've included some of the attributes that we know are conducive to an approval in the AI engine, in the artificial intelligence engine that we use to design novel RNAs. So in hindsight, I am grateful on how rigorous this process was. Number one, because it's ensuring that these products are safe. And that's the most important thing. But number two, because now we know what it's going to take to get the 20 or so products that we have in our pipeline through research, development, and eventually into approval.
As an investor, Matt also had to seriously consider the risks that came with the uncertainty of EPA approval.
How did you get comfort that you guys were going to be able to get through that? How do you think about being able to support your entrepreneur there?
That one is tricky. I think the real risk there is time. And obviously, when you make these venture investments, you make them so that the company has a certain amount of runway to achieve certain milestones. But frankly, with these novel products and innovations, it's not entirely clear how much time it will take to actually get an approval. And so the risk there that we had to just underwrite to was we believe that this will take a period of X years and it may take longer, but it's time. I think we're very comfortable early on that this is something that is safe. The question was, what sort of testing do we have to do to prove that it's safe? How do we actually get over the bar when there is maybe a new or novel regulatory process that we have to go through? And over the period of the past few years, we've got that approval from EPA. And in fact, there is a specific pathway for RNA for this molecule now, and so which is excellent because I think we have a little bit more of an understanding of what it might take to get new products to market.
So now GreenLight has the technology and the EPA approval. The only thing left to do is to convince farmers to buy the product.
And so a lot of companies have the technical capability, but oftentimes they don't have the commercialization talent on board to be able to think about the path to market, who's going to sell it, what channels it's going to go through, what price point you're going to sell it for, how you're going to position it, and that kind of stuff. When did the company start to think about those types of things, and how did you help them, or what was the process there at the board level?
I would just say it is never too early to be thinking about those types of things. I think you always have to think about the customer and the market. Initially, it was really about the price point for the application. Actually, by the time we wrote our initial check at S2G, they had actually beaten our highest level target. So we felt pretty good at that point. But they continued to march down and get to lower price points. But initially, it was, can you actually produce this at a price point that makes it viable to be spread on broad acre row crops and the like? And that was the first commercial consideration. And then I think at the early stages, there are considerations around efficacy and proof of efficacy across different environmental parameters that are commercial in nature, because the farmer has to see that this is something that's going to work for them. As far as branding, distribution, and retail, we really started to think about that after we had sufficient validation and we're going through later stage trial and the like. You start to say, how long is it going to take you to actually put together the appropriate team, put together the appropriate collateral to actually be out in the market in advance of the selling season? And we worked our way back from that. And I think Andrey and team have done a phenomenal job. We're sold out of this year's product, which I think is great. And I think it speaks to the need for the product, but they've done a good job of understanding how to really balance the technological development with the commercial development now that we have something that is a commercially viable product.
You can get everything right, but without the final step of actually selling the product to the consumer, none of the technology or policy innovation would matter. The GreenLight team focused on listening to farmers and incorporating that data and feedback throughout the process, which helped accelerate adoption.
So, Andrey, tell us a little bit about the success of Calantha and how it's going so far.
It's one of those wonderful stories where we dramatically underestimated what the demand for this product was going to be in the market. We have an extraordinarily experienced commercial team, and so they prepared to have an introduction of the product that followed more or less what other premium biologics have followed in the market. And so we produced Calantha basically through the latter part of last year, expecting that approval that came on December 21. By the way, little anecdote, we got the approval on December 21. Our team went out like crazy to state houses across North America to get state registrations. They got 5 state registrations by December 26. How? I have no idea. But they figure out a way to get state registrations done in 4 days in the middle of Christmas. Then by December 28, we made our first shipment. A lot of companies break between Christmas and New Year's. This year, GreenLight had to work 3 shifts to get product out the door. So we actually were commercial revenue in 2023, which is incredibly satisfying. But we were producing that Calantha through the latter part of 2023. And we frankly expected to be selling Calantha throughout Q1. We signed 3 amazing distributors that cover 90% of the potato growing territories in the United States, and they were ready and primed to go. Basically, by week 1, we had orders that basically took our entire inventory, and by the end of January, we had no product left. And so the rollout went much better than we anticipated. The demand for the product was probably 3 or 4 times higher than we thought it was going to be, and we are sold out of Calantha for the remainder of 2024. But at this point, we have shipped the largest ever shipment of RNA. Last week, we shipped 40 kilos of RNA in one single day.
As an aside, 40 kilos of RNA is enough to treat 10,000 acres of potatoes.
And in doing so, we will potentially displace as much as 2 metric tons of chemicals. And so just from a chemical load perspective, it's an incredible achievement. But what's incredible is the adoption that validates our process and our thesis. We have been working hand in hand with farmers for 5 years. We've done field trials in every kind of weather condition, type of potato, application regime with farmers across North America, right? You don't get a shortcut on that. Getting to understand your customer, getting to understand how they want to use the product, what they want to see in the product. That is why this rollout went as well as it did. There are too many people in our business that are trying to tell the farmer how to do things, and that doesn't work. These people have been farming the land for hundreds of years. And in order to get them to adopt a new technology, they have to know that it's going to be good for their business, good for their personal well-being, and good for the land, because the land is what they depend on to feed their family for the rest of their lives.
The next product in GreenLight's pipeline, currently awaiting approval, is designed to protect honeybees from the destructive varroa mite. Honeybees, which pollinate around a third of all the food we consume, are critical for agricultural production.
So let's talk about one of your next ones coming up, around honeybees. Obviously, pollinators, you hear stats that if the honeybees disappeared, our food supply would disappear. Why was that the next product you're going after? And share a little story on that.
Again, it was a fight that we knew we could win, right? It had been demonstrated in the lab that varroa mites, which are the primary cause for pollinator colony collapse, could be addressed by RNA. Number two, from a regulatory perspective, it's very different if you put a pouch. This is our hopefully soon-to-be product. It's a little pouch that contains water and sugar and RNA that gets placed inside the beehive. The adult bees use that nectar that we're feeding them that contains the RNA to distribute among the baby bees, and it basically prevents the thriving of the larva of the varroa mite. So from a regulatory perspective, you're not spraying anything. You're not exposing hundreds of other species. You're basically feeding the bees the RNA. And so it's a lot more contained and a lot more precise in its application than many other products that we could go after. And then, as you say, it's one of the most important needs of our entire ecosystem, of our entire human race, right? They are being affected by a pest called the varroa mite, which is present in 90% plus of the beehives in North America and Europe, and rapidly expanding to the rest of the world. And in the US and Europe causes the collapse of up to 50% of beehives. And the solutions that are in the market today simply don't work to prevent that colony collapse. So that was a no-brainer. We have something that can work for that problem, and we have enough of a case to make it a positive business. We need to go after that target because our human survival depends on the success of solutions to that problem. And our product, which hopefully will get approved this year, in the latter part of this year, has demonstrated its ability to protect entire bee colonies against colony collapse.
Navigating this many stages in the development of a company is no easy task. Andrey has been at the helm of GreenLight since day one and has managed to build a capable and well-suited team around him.
Do you have a philosophy on leadership as to how you engage with your team? Because it's been 8 years since when you originally founded. It's a journey. So how do you maintain the leadership, the team, the fight there? How do you do that?
I start every morning by saying I'm the wrong guy to run this company. Prove to me, before you brush your teeth and get in the shower, that you're still deserving of being the chief executive of this company. What are you bringing to the table today? How are you going to change and grow to ensure that you're still worthy of being the CEO of this company? And by the way, it's not only me, right? I do go to Matt and say, hey, am I still worthy to serve people in a CEO position? And once you do that and you're honest with yourself, then you can do the same with your entire team. And you must do the same with your entire team. There's a natural inflection point as to where the people who got you through the narrowing of the field from an insane and seemingly endless number of possibilities to solve the problem, and you got it narrowed down, and now it's not about scouting and blue sky and try crazy things. Now it's about execution and focus and discipline, right? It is very hard for anyone to make that jump. It's very hard for a CEO to make that jump. So I've made that jump a couple of times, and I know when that jump is coming, and I prepare myself for that because it's a really difficult one, right? You have to go from the guy who does everything and has their hands on every plate and wants to be a part of every decision because you have to within a very short period of time being hands off. I have now a role, and I need to be exceptional at my role, but I need to let other people be exceptional at their role, right? And so I don't deal with manufacturing issues. I don't negotiate distribution agreements. I don't come up with new target product profiles. That's somebody else's responsibility. Today, I'm basically chief fundraising officer and chief talk to politicians until you're blue in the face officer. That's what my job has become. And at some point, I got to look in myself in the mirror and say, is there someone better than me at setting the vision and mission of the company? Right? Because as the company change, you have a choice. Either the people change with the company and grow with it, or you have to replace them. Now, we have an exceptional team. It's a team that is being a little over-designed for what the company was about a year ago or 2 years ago. And now that we have an approved product, soon to be 3 approved products, distribution agreements with multinational corporations, now they're beginning to be right on their sweet spot, right? And now you're beginning to see them thrive. But it takes this experience, unfortunately, of knowing when you need to shift gears from being the wide, broad, research-based company to saying, okay, nobody cares anymore about research and whatever. Bottom line, guys, sales, margin, profit. That's what GreenLight is about now.
When we say it's been a thrill to be with GreenLight on this journey, we mean it. From the recognition of a product need to the release of a novel crop protection product, it truly has been an exciting and rewarding ride. And it's only the beginning. Andrey shared what GreenLight's future may hold.
The 2 directions in which we're going at the same time. First one is, now that we've tackled a lot of these relatively easy fights, is to now start tackling the really big problems, right? Basically row crops. When we look at the use of chemical pesticides, the primary use is in addressing pests that attack corn, soy, wheat, cotton, and so on. Our third product is a product that is going primarily to the Brazilian market to tackle the problem of fall armyworm in corn and soy, which is a multi-billion-dollar problem. And so moving RNA from the realm of relatively small acreage and high-value crops, moving it into the large industrial operations is really what's going to have the most impact in terms of sustainability, in terms of climate, in terms of reducing the chemical load on that environment. So we're super excited about now working insecticides in corn, herbicides in soy, fungicides in wheat, and so on. That's one big avenue. Second one is that we are now looking to expand internationally beyond the US and Europe and start working in places like Latin America and Africa, and ensuring that even small landowners have access to breakthrough technologies. We are in the process of establishing partnerships with a number of nonprofits, for example, to start trials on fall armyworm in Rwanda. We are working, as I said, in Latin America and Brazil, moving to Mexico, to Argentina, talking to places like Malaysia and Indonesia, and really making sure that we're not only tackling the problem in nations that are already fairly developed in their agricultural know-how, but ensuring that people who are just coming up to speed have access to those leading technologies. Because ultimately, it is only when we have a coordinated global effort in how we grow food sustainably that we will see the results that we all want to see.
Andrey, it really has been just fascinating and fantastic to see the evolution that GreenLight has gone through since we've got involved. We'd just love to continue to follow what you're doing and watch your tenacity and the ability to just keep pushing, right? Like chop wood, carry water, do the work, right? Keep showing up for those boxing matches, get better every day. So love it.
It has been our absolute honor and pleasure working with you guys.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for tuning in to the S2G podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, or share it with a friend. For more information or to connect with us, check out s2gventures.com.